There's a few of us sharing the contemporary reading today, 140 years of Ponsonby Baptist Church, a story of survival against the odds. First, rows. The church began with strife. 3 ministers resigned in the first 6 years. Who knows? Minute books don't say. Was it theology or was it personalities? The first minister was a Welsh craftsman who resigned after 3 weeks. What was happening? But he was persuaded to stay a year. The second, Charles Carter, was famous, a missionary, a scholar, a translator, the first president of the Baptist Union. During his tenure, the treasurer, the secretary, and one deacon, John Bigelow, resigned before Carter himself resigned. Next was young Reverend Hughes Jones. 6 months only into his ministry, he too resigned, pointing his finger at Mr. Bigelow.
I'm convinced Mr. Bigelow has been working against me and undermining my influence.
The church, with advice from the Tabernacle, held a humiliation meeting to search their hearts. But there were more resignations later in the year. People erased themselves from the role. And then Jones lasted just 1 year. And then a young Irish minister and his bride ushered in years of hope and energy. It was a community that liked rules. It took itself seriously. Every activity had its book of rules. The Constitution included 4 detailed rules simply on who could be qualified to take communion. Soon there were a dozen rules published for the huge Sunday school. There were 9 rules for the choir, which included these ones.
Members of the choir who absent themselves from weekly practice or their places at Sunday services without apology will be liable to have their name removed from the roll of membership. Meetings will commence at 7:30 and close at 9 p.m. No member shall leave a choir practice without the consent of the conductor. Funds. The subscription shall be 1 shilling a quarter, payable in advance.
It was a place of protest too. 19th and early 20th century members, as in many Protestant churches in the city, took their role in society beyond the church. They took that as seriously as they took their own church conduct.
Church members voted to protest against gambling and films of prize fighting, against the council locking up prostitutes to treat their diseases while men ran free, against running trams on the Sabbath. Reverend Rawlings produced a pamphlet against the atrocities of World War I. Another preached against members purchasing cars. And above all, church members protested against alcohol.
The most outspoken minister was Reverend A.H. Collins. This is my hero from our church in the 1980s. A keen trade union supporter, a critic of capitalism. He even started the first book club in Ponsonby, and for the whole area. His ministry attracted liberal-minded Christians.
All the contradictions of life are harmonized when we look at them in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we who stand confronted with the absorbing contrast between the underworked and the overworked, between the growth of wealth and the increase of poverty, must be willing to apply the role of Christ to these social questions.
We also had an active role in overseas mission. Lottie Fair and Walter Barry, two of the first missionaries, Baptist missionaries, to leave New Zealand to go to India and Bangladesh, came through their Sunday school years here at Ponsonby. And when Alfred North became minister here in 1903, he himself was returning after 2 years in the Calcutta Road Baptist Church as a missionary. He held to the importance of adult baptism, but he took a liberal view of cooperating with other denominations.
We are not sent to baptize, but to preach the gospel. We are fully persuaded in our own mind about baptism, but God forbid that we should hold it with narrow-hearted bigotry uncharitably. The liberty that we claim for ourselves, we claim for others, and count it an honor to cooperate with the men of all denominations to extend the kingdom and glorify the name of our dear Lord.
And then there were years of losses. After these hectic years of activities, the first losses came with World War I, when 42 young men from this church went away to France and Gallipoli. When they returned, the property prices in Ponsonby were rising, sounds like today, and young couples left the church for cheaper suburbs. A doer minister made things worse. Reverend Joe Carlisle found the church, it's very dark in here at night, he found it in darkness, the piano thumping, the young people dancing. On Sunday, he attacked them.
Let me be very clear about dancing. The halls of hell, yes, the halls of hell are lined with the frocks, the evening frocks of dancers. I wouldn't pay twopence for dancers on the auction block of hell.
Carlisle left soon after that. And most of the next 50 years of this church, the whole spanning the mid-century, were fragmented, with Ponsonby relying on student and part-time ministers coming and going. They could very rarely afford to have a full-time minister. But by 1970, most of the church's stalwarts had gone. Ponsonby was full of Pacifica immigrants and students crammed into Ponsonby's old villas. New life came when Alec Wong, converted in the Billy Graham Crusade, brought his Niue Island customers to his fruit shop along to the church here, where he and Murray Beck fostered a sense of family and feasting, I could say. However, finances were difficult. They really met the budget, and there were several takeover bids. The Baptist College principal suggested that the city mission should supervise our finances. The Tabernacle asked us to close our Sunday night services and join with them. A Samoan congregation put in a formal bid to buy our building, but the handful of ministers stayed determined to survive independently.
Student minister Simon Thong taught us that small is beautiful. Minister Murray Beck saw our virtues. There is a great deal going for us: diversity, depth of talent and our smallness as a group. And Alec Wong responded indignantly to the bid to buy us out. I will keep these doors open.
Another hero. Mercy, Rob.
Clearly, the church has had a tradition of social action. Mike Riddell arrived in the mid-80s with faith in the potential of an urban church, having come back from Rüschlikon, training in Rüschlikon and in Switzerland. He oversaw the founding of Court to grow from small beginnings like a grain of mustard seed and become a place of refuge. Community of refuge trust. With a theology focused on mercy, he introduced communion with the words, "This table is for sinners." Flamboyant figures came along. Kay paid tribute to Roger Elvis at his funeral.
Roger Dodger, the old codger, he would say, "I'm mad, and I know I'm mad, but it's the ones who don't know they're mad that you've got to watch out for." Without Roger, I would never have learned all the words to "Love Me Tender." I would never have known a man could have so many outfits in one day. Without Roger, I would never have heard such a phosphorescent vision of heaven.
And then Scott Malcolm came along and continued Mike's rather gutsy approach to theology with his well-worn phrase, and Jody, you've got a long way to go yet, "Shit happens." Jody's courage led us through bitter disputes with the Baptist Union over same-sex marriage. At a formal meeting, Ponsonby Baptist approved the principle that the church may be a venue for marriage and the pastor may marry any persons whom the law permits to be married. We have continued being a leading social action edge of the Baptist Union. They need us. As chairperson, Jeff gave a vision of solidarity. The process is going to be exhausting, and we will continue to get beaten up. We need to stay together in truth.
Thank you so much for that collection of readings. And Margaret, we are just so lucky to have someone in the church who knows so much of our history and can pull it together just succinctly and beautifully for us at times like this.